funding police departments. How can that affect and help the people in here who may not understand how these government entities can affect what a police department can and cannot do?
Well, they control the purse strings. So if you are trying to hire officers, and the majority, I'll probably say 75% of a police department's or probably sheriff's department's budget is personnel costs. So when you realize that there are other tools out there that you may want or need to engage in, whether it's community policing, crime fighting, etc., they cost money. And people will say, you need this and you need that, but when it comes bottom line, it may not be voted in the council because maybe something else, there's some other project that came up and that funding is going to go towards that. I'll give you an example. We wrote a grant for $5.8 million to get a better system. We'll start putting computers in the cars, etc., to share information. I was allowed to apply for that grant, and the city was supposed to put up $1.3 million as the match. The plan was the city put up 1.3, and then the other agencies that tied in would fund it because they'd have to pay a certain amount to sustain the grant. However, when the grant came back, I was asked, well, where are you going to get the matching money? I'm like, well, you let me apply for it, and we could not tap into that money until we got the grant money, the matching money. So until I got it, I couldn't, it was just sitting there. But yet I could sit at the city council meeting and I saw them vote $25 million to expand the parking deck. It's still sitting basically empty. Every time I pass by it, I think about that. So the decisions that's made impact that. That's where you can help in your local government. If you know of things that, if you've got that, the head has the interaction with the community, you can be an ally because you know that your community needs these things. Your officers need this equipment to help get those funds allocated. And sometimes it's seen. Go back to the head of the agency. If you're looking at community policing and they don't buy into it, it's not going to work because they're not going to apply for the funding that goes with it, sustain that funding, and then officers won't do anything with it either because the head doesn't care about it, then they won't either.
And you want law enforcement to go out there and put their life on the line, but you want them to go out there naked. It's just not going to work.
Expound on what you mean when you say go out there naked.
Well, we need the proper equipment in order to do what we need to perform the duties that you will have us to perform. Now, if our city councils and our county commissioners are not that interested in preserving the life and the health of that community, then don't criticize the law enforcement. We're doing the best that we can with what we have. Just like Chief Nunn said, well, I call her Chief Nunn, she'll always be a chief. But just like she said, they control the purse strings. And whenever things going wrong, go down to your city hall, go down to your county commissioners and let them know what time it is. Because we're doing the best we can with what we're working with.
So in other words, the people in the community have more of an ability to make these changes that they want. They have the power within themselves to do it, and they just don't realize it yet.
Yeah, they realize they have the power. I believe that what it is they don't exercise that power until a crime comes to their neighborhood. And, you know, prevention is good. You don't wait till your car breaks down in order to get it checked before you get it checked out first. That's why car dealers say bring your car in every 6 months or every 3 months. Let us check it just to ensure that it's in good shape. If law enforcement had all the tools that they need and everything that we need to do that job, we're going to make the elected officials look good. Because business means that we're going to come and establish our businesses where we know that there's some good law enforcement. Who's going to come to a community where robberies occurring every single night. Look at your communities now. What are you seeing? Payday loans, drug stores, ABC stores, a church, a pawn shop, and a funeral home. You know what that means? When you get broke, you go to the payday loan. When you can't pay them back and get sick, you go to the drugstore. When all that run out, you go to the ABC store, and then what's left? The pawn shop and the church. A city is breaking down when you start seeing these kind of places move in that's not contributing to your community, but taking away from the community. And businesses come where there's good law enforcement. That's what our community leaders and our community officials need to understand.
So it seems that what I'm hearing here is proactivism, proactivism, proactivism. Let's go over here to our sociologists and social work and human rights table. What did you all think about what our officers over here were saying about that proactivism, that desire that if you want a better police force, if you want safer communities, if you want better relationships with law enforcement, then go out there and make it happen?
I am sitting here looking calm, but frankly, I'm just so excited because what they are saying, all of my co-panelists are saying, and particularly Mr. Moore and Chief Nunn, is exactly right. We have the power to go out and do what we want our police officers to be able to do. We don't do that, and a lot of that is because of the growing inequality, the economic inequality that's occurred over the last 30 years that Jeremy was talking about. Frankly, we just don't have the time. Most of us are working so much today, and in fact, the employment numbers that just came out for last month said that the number of unemployment has declined. You know why? Because we've got more people working 2 to 3 jobs part-time to get the hours that full-time requires, just to maintain middle class, quote, middle class lifestyle. That's been going on and building up for the last 30, almost 40 years really. So with that going on, who has time? And then if you've got children to raise, going back to a point that Chief Nunn made, I have to comment another racial issue for me, that while y'all were talking about how you need to raise children up to be respectful of police, I always just took that for granted. I've got a 30-year-old son. I never once raised him up and told him, don't put your hands in your pockets when you go in a store when he was 3 years old. Never once crossed my mind. Because that's my privilege. That's something I expect is going to be afforded me as a white woman raising a white son. I never had any idea about what went on in raising up non-white children so that they would not be accosted. It never occurred to me until I had a reason to be vested in that. So those parents then, getting back to the economic issues, they don't have that time to invest in that either. And those who are living in lower income neighborhoods where we do have the moving in of all of these exploitive services to take advantage of the inequality today, then those folks get reinforced in those behaviors that are stereotypical, at least from my practice standpoint. That's what we see happening. And so you end up with this conundrum of how are we going to get people out and empowered to do what they need to do? And I don't know what the answer to that is. All I can feel and say about that is a personal passion that, you know, democracy is not free. And even though it takes that extra effort to go out and organize, that's what we need to do and can do as individual citizens concerned about these issues like Ferguson, concerned about our police being more like peace officers, caring for us and us caring and respecting them. If we can't put that initiative in, then how are we really honoring all of those who went before us in civil rights era, in wars that have gone on, now are going on, have gone on before? How can we really fairly and reasonably take advantage of that freedom that we have and not put any effort or sacrifice into it? I'm just wondering.
But isn't that why we elect officials to see that our concerns and our needs should be met? Isn't that why we go out and vote?
That's right, but on the other hand, there's also this I wanted to add to that, and then I would answer that and let others do that as well, is that when community organizes, if we want our police to do better and be better and more effective and have what they need and be able to have the time to involve in themselves in the community and make sure that we don't have those parking garages built instead of protecting the public like we ought to, then we have that power as citizens greater than actually the police do. Public servants don't always have that freedom to go and advocate for services and fair representation, competent representation among our leaders. So when we just, matter-of-factly, perfunctorily go into the polling booth, and sometimes we know who's running and sometimes we don't, sometimes we really don't frankly care, we just know we got to go do this so we can get the little sticker that says I voted. But have we really paid attention to what they're all about and what they've done and what their record is? I don't know. I wonder sometimes why we continue to re-elect the same people over and over, who still do the same things over and over.
First of all, it's 2 words: get involved. You got to get involved. There's no excuse. In the year 2014, you got to get involved. Get out and vote. But like you said, look out who you're voting for. Somebody look just like you might not even be there for you, especially when they get in office. They come into your churches, take advantage of you. Once you're elected, no return phone call. I mean, politics is a dirty game. Bottom line, politics is a dirty game. But at the same time, don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution. That means they go vote. Because that's what's running this. You got to get involved.
But then there's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you said there's no excuse, I know in our community there's no excuse no more. It might be an excuse what's going on in the white community, but in our community there's no excuse because there's too much going on. We're being under attack every day. So get involved. How many young people know all this? Please raise your hand. This is the step of the beginning. I'm asking all young people to put down the pistols, pick up the pencils, because another victim dies, another mother cries. Tell your children you're going to be somebody someday. That's just bottom line. Continue to put that positive thing in their brain, nothing all this negative stuff. Because when I go to these alternative schools, they're getting so much negative stuff going on at home. It's just sad. You just don't know what's going on with these children going out here, even in this room. So there's no excuse. I can keep saying that, but sometimes you have to keep saying that because, wow, it's just so much going on in this country. I just love all of y'all. It's just the fact that we don't go back old school. I believe in whoopings. I don't believe in child abuse. If not, you're gonna be dressed up in the blue and orange and someone's judge. It's gonna be too late.
You used the wrong word with it.
I'm sorry?
Wasn't that called hard love at one time?
Of course.
I
mean, I fear my parents. But I understand why now. I do understand. Our rights has been taken as parents. Your own kids want to call child, I don't know what they call it here in Birmingham, but you say something or whoop them, something, they want to call it, what, child custody or something? And they will come out, right, so it's just, as rights, our rights has been taken away as parents. But I will whoop my children, period. If not, they're going to be in someone's jail.
You have to use the word spank.
Spank, whooping, well, I'm old school whooping.
You mentioned about giving a positive message. I just wanted to say that my biggest cheerleader, and still is my biggest cheerleader, is my mother. She's now 89 years old.
Right.
She always told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be, but I had to work for it because nobody was going to give me anything, and it wasn't going to be easy. Number two, which should be number one, she taught me first in the house to fear God, and that's my biggest fear, a reverent fear. I have not achieved anything that I achieved apart from God. It is His design, His plan, and He allowed me to fulfill His plan. And we have gotten away from letting our young people know about that. Some don't believe in God. Some like, okay, I'll use you if I need you. But that fear kept me in line so that I wasn't a renegade, that I cared for people, that if somebody had a lot of money and I could take that money from them because nobody was there but me and them, my fear of God kept me from doing that. It wasn't because the rules said don't do it, but God's rules said don't do it. So that's the ultimate that we need to get back into our communities and society.
Let me say, I became an officer because I was bullied in school. And I grew up saying, okay, this will never happen.
I hear you. You hear that all the time, to be honest.
Yeah.
The ones that got bullied in school actually become
Right.
police officers.
And I've always been of the mindset of protecting and serving since high school. But now, I respect coaches. Are there any coaches in here? Let me tell you something about coaches, and we can learn from them. Coaches can take 25 strangers, and in a matter of months, you have them working as a team. And if we had the mindset of the coaches, and if we had the tools and the knowledge that coaches use to get 25 strangers working together and accomplishing something and winning something and doing something important, imagine now where we would be in our society if everyone had a coach mentality. And that's why I respect and admire coaches, because they know exactly what it takes to get people to work together.
One of the quotes, let me close. One of the quotes from Dr. King said, "A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus." And that just exemplifies what you just said. We're not searching for kids that can just get together, but I can mold them to get together. That's what it takes in our communities as well.
In this last segment, I wanted to be able to discuss what may be a very rough topic for many people in the room. I want to have a chance to talk about, we always discuss about how we have officers that kill unarmed people, or we always talk about instances where we have officers taking the law into their own hands and taking the lives of innocent people. Unfortunately, you all, that side of the equation works both ways. We do have situations where we have officers that are recklessly and killed, and their lives are taken by civilian people when they're just trying to do their jobs. Just to kind of name you a couple of examples, just this past weekend, this Saturday, in Elmendorf, Texas, 25 miles outside of San Antonio, it's a town of about 1,500 people. Police Chief Michael Pimentel was trying to serve an arrest warrant on a 24-year-old man named Joshua Manuel Lopez. Mr. Lopez allegedly opened fire on the chief, shooting him once in the shoulder and once in the abdomen. Joshua Manuel Lopez has now been charged with capital murder of a police officer in the state of Texas. On the 4th of July weekend, 2 officers were killed in 2 separate shootings. Officer Jerry Westerfield, who was a 19-year veteran of the Gary, Indiana Police Department, was killed on Sunday, July the 6th, while responding to a call. A day earlier, on Saturday, July the 5th, Indianapolis police officer Perry Wren, who was a 21-year veteran of the force, was responding to a call of shots fired. He and another officer were approaching a group of people in an alleyway when a gunman started shooting, killing Officer Wren. And on June 9th of this year, Las Vegas police officers 41-year-old Alan Beck and 31-year-old Igor Soldo were eating lunch inside of a CC's Pizza when they were shot and killed by 2 assailants. The 2 assailants then went to a nearby Walmart, shooting and killing a 3rd person, then later turning the gun on themselves. The assailants were later identified as a couple with white supremacy affiliations. Witnesses say that before the shooting began, that the couple shouted out, quote, "This is a revolution." Officer Beck was married with 3 children. Officer Soldo was also married with a child. Such tragic cases, and those were 5 officers in just this summer alone. Mind you, I didn't have the time to discuss the number of officers killed in the year 2014, from January to now. The numbers were staggering. And unfortunately, this area, Calhoun County, is no stranger to this type of tragedy. I was notified this morning, and I didn't realize until I woke up. I received a text message telling me that today was the 3rd anniversary of the day that Anniston police officer Justin Sullivan died after he was taken off life support at UAB Hospital in Birmingham. Justin Sullivan was a 27-year-old officer with the Anniston Police Department. He was shot and killed by 26-year-old Joshua Eugene Russell. He was charged with capital murder, and he has now been sentenced to death row. How do we... There are officers in here. We have people of the community in here. Officer Sullivan's shooting tore this community apart in more ways than one. How do officers and how do people of the community heal from that?
Talking from a child's standpoint, someone lost their father, someone lost their uncle, so I agree when that happened as well, when an officer get killed and also when a civilian get killed. So we can't kind of divide the boat, but we do understand that things happen different ways or whatever, but when I do hear that, you know, it could be a family member of mine because my sister used to date a police officer and used to come home and tell stories about what it is that's going out in the street. So I know that it's not a easy job. I do aware of that, but like Chief Nunn said, you have good officers, you have bad officers, but when I hear officers get killed like that or whatever, you know, it's a tragic. You know, a life has been taken. You know, so we can't be biased on that, but I know that for a fact when it's the other way around, how officers might shoot us 6 times unarmed and 1 in the head, so that's unacceptable as well. You know, but I just fear anything, but like I said, I wouldn't want to be no officer today because the bad officers make the good officers bad, you know, point blank. Because my sister, again, the officer that I knew, was my sister, he was cool, down to earth, and he told me basically that more crime took place in the white community than the black community, but it's not reported. Now he told me that. They don't put that on the news, point blank. So again, it's a tragedy because somebody lost a father, somebody lost an uncle, you know, a relative, so it's a very sad situation.
Anybody else on the panel would like to speak to this? Oh, and I want you all to try to take this with as much seriousness as you can, because there are people in this audience who knew Mr. Sullivan, who worked with Mr. Sullivan. This is your chance to speak to them and tell them this is how you heal from this, and this is how you as a community can move forward.
Well, we all have an appointed time. The Bible speaks of that. Over in Ecclesiastes 3, it talks about a time to be born and a time to die. So we all have our appointed times. We don't know when that time is going to come, but it is appointed. The healing comes is when you understand and know that in our living that we have to be prepared for what we're not prepared for. It's unfortunate that the officer was killed, but no one deserves to die, period. You know, police officers are confronted with death every day that they put their uniform on and walk out the door. There's a sovereign group that says, we don't believe in the government. They come out of their cars firing on police officers because they represent the authority of a government that they don't identify with. And I think the police officers in here know that this sovereign group that operates right here in Alabama and Ohio and everywhere else, when they exit those cars, when you stop them for a funny tag that they came up with for their sovereign government, that they're going to come out shooting. So understand that every time a police officer steps out of that vehicle or leaves his home, if he ain't kissing his children and wife, God help him. Because there's no guarantee that We pray that we come back home that night. But you just never know what you're going to run into out there on the street. One thing about the officer that was killed, my church I was pastoring the church down there, and I know that neighborhood. It wasn't, and this is just my thinking, the offender did not have nothing against the officer that he killed. It was the other officer that drove up as backup. What am I saying? I'm saying that it was unfortunate, that death. He was just as good as he can be to everyone he come in contact with. But it was his time. When it's my time to go, guess what? You can't stop it. The doctors can't stop it. Only the Lord. When he calls, he ain't gonna, I can't say, well, Lord, can you give me one more day? We need to be connected with the Lord. We need to be connected with Jesus. We need to get into someone's church. We need to understand what the Word of God means. And when we have that understanding, just like we lose a loved one, we're going to have to heal from that. The Bible says that we should mourn. In the Old Testament, it says you should only mourn for 30 days. I know people still mourning 15 years. You see what I'm saying? And when we are constantly mourning something, then we're not focused on the Lord. So we need to get our focus back on the one who can help us, who can protect us, who can redeem us. We need to get our focus back on Jesus.
And with that being said, this concludes the discussion with the panel. Please give them a round of applause.